morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, July 25th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm very happy to be joined by our Alex Gleitman. Alex, Friday Night Lights proved to be fruitful as usual for Ohio State with 2 commitments during the event and one the following day. Let's start with 2017 defensive end Chase Young. He gave his commitment to Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes at Friday Night Lights. Obviously a huge get for the Buckeyes. What's your thoughts on Chase Young committing at Friday Night Lights?
Yeah, no surprise there, Dave. I think on the site for a while we've been kind of saying that Chase Young very well could commit at Friday Night Lights. It was a great win for Ohio State over Alabama, where he had visited earlier in the week, and Maryland, the hometown school, which looked like the favorite early on. So that's, again, a huge recruiting win for Ohio State, and it's going to be a huge win for Larry Johnson on the field. They get a big, tall, long pass rusher, as Dwayne Long said, on the front row. If you were building a pass rush and piece by piece, it would end up looking like Chase Young when you're through with it. And you know, this kid, I mean, he's still kind of raw. He's still like, he's grown recently, so he just keeps growing, and he keeps growing into his body. So he's learning how to use his long arms, his long legs, his big body. He's getting stronger. So kind of the opportunities are endless for Chase Young when he gets to Ohio State, and this is truly a 5-star pickup for the Buckeyes.
And Brian Snead popped the cork on the 2018 class for the Buckeyes. The 4-star running back from Florida became Ohio State's first commitment in their 2018 class. Brian Snead is 5'11", 200 pounds. He is ranked as the number 6 running back in the country in the 2018 class and the number 80 overall player in the country in the 2018 class. Your thoughts on Brian Snead becoming the first commitment in Ohio State's 2018 class? This one kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah, well, Brian Snead actually named Ohio State as his leader a couple months ago when he got the offer, shortly after he got his offer. So I guess no one should have been that surprised, but I was pretty surprised as well that he popped this soon. It was his first visit to Ohio State. He did come up from Florida, though. Sefner Armwood, his high school, is somewhere that Urban Meyer had success when he was at the University of Florida. So there's a relationship there between Urban Meyer and the high school head coach. What I will say, and I will caution to fans, is this is a early verbal from a kid from Florida, and this just, you know, things are just done differently down there in recruiting, than the East Coast, the Midwest, kind of really the rest of the country. So I would caution that, you know, Brian Snead committing is a great thing for Ohio State. The kid looks like a man-child. If you saw the picture of him next to Urban Meyer, he's about 5'11", 200 pounds, rock solid, a really nice player. But I would caution that this one may not be completely over. I'm sure there will be more schools coming in. I'm sure there will be visits, and I'm sure Ohio State will have to work to hold on to him. So, while this is a great thing for Ohio State, kicking off its 2018 class with a top 100 player, the number 6 running back in the country, I would say that, you know, this isn't completely done yet.
Now, on Saturday, the Buckeyes got a commitment in their 2017 class from 4-star defensive back Amir Riep from Cincinnati Coleraine, and I think a lot of people just assumed the Buckeyes were going to get Amir Riep because of the Kerry Combs connection. Kerry Combs is Mr. Coleraine, you know, his years of success down there as head coach, and he still lives in Cincinnati. He drives up to Columbus for work. But it was a really close battle between Ohio State and Michigan State, it sounds like. But as expected, Amir Riep picked the Buckeyes on Saturday. Your thoughts about the 4-star defensive back picking the Buckeyes?
Yeah, Dave, it was much closer than people think. I think actually at one point, probably in like early June, mid-May-ish range, he was probably going to pick Michigan State if he had to pick back then, I think. And there was a visit. It must have happened around like June 8th or around that time, because it was right before the June 11th camp, or the June 14th camp, whatever Amir came back for right after that. But he took a visit to Ohio State and just spent time with a bunch of the players, a bunch of the coaches, and there was no other recruits there. It was kind of just him hanging out, like almost seeing what it would be like the day in the life of a Buckeye player. And I think that's really what sold him on coming to Ohio State. Outside of everything else, you know, the opportunities to exceed both on and off the field, to play for Kerry Combs, who's a Coleraine guy and who he trusts and who his coach trusts, and all things of that, and, you know, the home state school a little bit closer to home and whatnot. So I think, you know, that visit and then followed by the camp, I think that's really kind of what turned the tide for Ohio State. Michigan State was doing a great job in selling him on saying, you know, Ohio State's got all these 4- and 5-star DBs coming in, and, you know, you could come here, play year one, you're going to be the guy in our class, the headliner. I think that was kind of working on him for a little bit. But, you know, ultimately, as you said, Ohio State, they did what they do best. They recruit, and they won an in-state kid, Amir Riep. That would have been a big loss had they lost to Michigan State. There's there's very few people that Ohio State and Michigan State have gone head-to-head with that have picked the Spartans. I mean, you could probably say L.J. Scott, but he didn't really get offered until very late in the process by Ohio State. And that's really the only one I can think of off the top of my head as far as kids from Ohio that both have gone head-to-head with. Michigan State has won.
I know a lot of Buckeye fans are hoping for a commitment from Emory Jones of Friday Night Lights. That didn't happen, but, Emory Jones is still, he's just, 2018 kid just entering his junior year of high school. He is ranked as the number 2 dual threat quarterback in the country in the 2018 class, number 42 overall prospect in the 2018 class. Give the listeners the latest on Emory Jones. You still think he'll be a Buckeye? Just what's the latest with him?
No, I do think he'll be a Buckeye. From everything I've heard, all sources have said the visit went absolutely fantastic. Emory had a great time, got plenty of attention. I think the biggest thing is he got to compete next to Tate Martell and Danny Clark all night long, and he saw that he was at least as good as them, if not better. Most people at Friday Night Lights felt Emory Jones was the best of the three. And, one night doesn't mean anything necessarily, but I think that fact, from everything I'm hearing, it kind of like helps him with the decision, because he's like, oh, if I'm going to come to Ohio State and they got 2 pretty good quarterbacks coming ahead of me, not to mention Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow, am I ever going to see the field? But I think him being able to go head-to-head with them on the same night in Ohio Stadium and see that he could compete with those guys, already a year younger, knowing that he has another year to develop ahead of them, I think that, that's going to help Ohio State a lot in this one. And it's really close between the Buckeyes and Tennessee. But I do think Emory Jones is going to go home, talk about everything with his family, his coach, and maybe before his high school season, because he wants to get this thing over with and start recruiting for his class. Before his high school season, I think he's going to make a decision. It could possibly come within a week, and I do think it's going to be the Buckeyes.
You mentioned Tate Martell and Danny Clark, the Buckeyes, 2 quarterback commitments in their 2017 class. What do you make of this situation? It sounds like there's a little tension between them. I think that's natural. I think they're both competitors. I also think maybe people, are looking at what happened at Friday Night Lights and saying, oh, Danny Clark outperformed Tate Martell. Well, last time I checked, they weren't playing real football out there. I think Tate Martell's probably one of these kids that's really good when the lights come on and they're playing real football, because he's a dual threat guy that runs around and makes plays like that. Whereas Danny Clark might look better at 7-on-7 camps and just, camps like this in general. Your take on that, whether you think Tate Martell is just a kind of a kid that's more of a gamer, he doesn't really shine in 7-on-7s and camps. And also just, the chemistry factor between Danny Clark and Tate Martell. Are there some issues there?
Well, first on Tate Martell, I think he's a kid who does well in 7-on-7s too, but I think you're right. I think to fully experience his full skill set, being able to throw on the run, scramble out of the pocket, make plays with his legs, keep plays alive, and look downfield and make the pass. Those are things you're not going to see in 7-on-7. There's no pass rush. There's no blockers. There's no, you kind of have to stay in the pocket and you get your X amount of time to throw the football and find someone open. Now, in a camp like this, from everything we know, Danny Clark had a great night, and maybe that made Tate look a little worse. Maybe Tate just didn't have his best night, and you're working with, he had Tyjon there, and he knows Tyjon, but you have a lot of receivers there who you don't know. There was a lot of drop passes, from what I understand, as far as, Tate throwing the football. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. But on the flip side, the little tension, I know Danny threw out a tweet kind of saying, it was a George Clooney face, and it was like when you spend 3 years building the number 1 class in the country and someone comes in and thinks they could do it in 3 months or whatever it is, and then it was quickly deleted. Listen, as you said, natural tension. You have 17-year-old kids. You have all these reporters ask them every day, what do you think about the other? What do you think about this situation? That's got to wear on you a lot. And, Danny Clark has put in a ton of work in building this class off the field. He's been a tremendous ambassador for Ohio State. He's recruited his tail off for the Buckeyes to help bring in the best talent. And so, he probably feels, again, a teenager. It's hard to remember looking at these kids with the teenagers, but a teenager, feeling that, Tate Martell's coming in and almost, if you look at social media, he's acting like he's now almost the leader of the class, and he's going to be the one responsible for getting everyone. That is his job as a quarterback. He's got to help. If these two work in tandem, it would be incredible. But, not knowing each other, being across the country, not really having a chance to build a relationship, and playing the same position and knowing that you're going to be competing and that everyone's talking about you every time they talk about the Ohio State quarterback situation. As you said, there's natural tension. So, I don't fault Danny for kind of having a teenage moment there. I think he, taking it down, he probably learned from that situation. You probably just keep your mouth shut and work hard and compete like he has been doing and like he says he plans to do. But, I don't think Tate Martell has any beef with Danny. I think Danny probably is getting sick and tired of everyone talking about him and Tate Martell and what's going to happen with him in this class and whatnot. So, again, just a teachable moment, a teenager learning how to deal with things. So I think it's going to be done and over pretty soon.
The Buckeyes now have 16 commitments in their 2017 class. The runaway favorite right now for the number one class in the country. Now, who knows? Maybe because of numbers, somebody will catch them. But if you look at average star ranking, it's just off the charts. So 16 commitments already. How many will they sign in their 2017 class, Alex?
Oh, the number I've been hearing since the start is 18 to 20. I mean, they're already signed over. I think it's going to end up being closer to 20 with the way they're recruiting. And right now they have 16 verbal commitments. The kicker, Blake Haubiel from Buffalo, New York, he actually will not count against these numbers as he's going to pay his own way his first semester, similar to what Drew Chrisman's doing this year. So he'd count toward the 2018 numbers. He'll go on scholarship in January, but he won't count toward the 2017 numbers. So that brings him down to 15. And then, so I could see them getting 5 more players in that scenario. I mean, there's obviously different things with certain players that they could get creative in scholarship-wise. Sean Wade is a guy who they still don't know if they're going to be able to sign on signing day. So they could be at technically 13 or 14 players now. But I do think that they could add 5 players to this class by the time things are over. I think Cam Akers, I think Jay Tufele, I think Baron Browning, Anthony Hines, Jeff Okuda, Trevon Grimes, and Tyjon Lindsey. Those are 7 guys right there. Those are the primary targets. If they could get 5 of those guys, I mean, this class literally might go down as the best ever on paper come signing day. They're in a great spot. They could be very selective, and they can kind of take their time with certain players that maybe you would have to offer a little bit earlier in the process or be ready to take their commitment early in the process. Then you can kind of push them off, given that they're in on so many elite talents with, as I said, probably just 5 spots remaining, 5 or 6 spots remaining in the class, depending on how things shake out. With a couple of currently committed players.
Great insights, as always, from our Alex Gleitman. Thank you, Alex. A little programming note. Big Ten Media Days start today, but Ohio State has all of its media obligations tomorrow, beginning with Urban Meyer at the podium at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That will be broadcast live on Big Ten Network. And there's a bunch of other stuff tomorrow from Ohio State that will not be broadcast on Big Ten Network Live. Steve Hellwagon and I will be in Chicago covering it, so make sure you keep it locked to Bucknuts tomorrow for all of our coverage from Big Ten Media Days. We'll have Urban Meyer's comments in the morning. We'll have the comments from Ohio State's players. They're going to go from about 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and then Urban Meyer has his final press conference from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's going to go kind of late. It's a different setup this year. Make sure you keep it locked to Bucknuts tomorrow for Ohio State's portion of Big Ten Media Days. Thanks again to Alex Gleitman, and thanks to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.